Hello, everyone out there on this hot Thursday evening. But it's no stop here, and I'm lucky. I've pulled an awesome guest away from the hustings. It's just been in the RIBA hustings, giving it his all passionately. But we're going to relax together because this is the after show, or as you cutely said, Muyiwa, it's like the Love Island After Sun. I never watched that, but I'll try. I don't think they would let me on with this look. I've got a face for radio, but we will relax together. We will unwind. But first of all, I should introduce you a little bit. But the whole point of today is you're going to introduce yourself a little bit. Yeah. So I know you, Muyiwa Oki, from the hustings, from the campaign that's been going on. But for anyone that's kind of not been up to date with it, or they've been too busy, or whatever reason, do you want to just say a little bit about who you are and why you're running? There we go. Okay. For the RIBA Presidency.
Yes. Thank you so much, Stephen. And hello, everyone who is watching online and who's going to be watching the replays. So you're here with us on the equivalent of Love Island After Sun. And my name is Muyiwa Oki, and I'm running for the RIBA president for this election process. And I'm campaigning on the priorities of transparency and inclusion, focusing on the next gen talent of architects and championing and building the skills for a digital future in our industry. I'm an architect and I work at Mace, and I focus on technology and innovation, working on modern means and construction projects. And in my previous role in Grimshaw, I was a founder and chair of the multi-ethnic group and allies network, which also drove change within our industry by championing, spotlighting ethnic diversity within the Grimshaw family. I have been quite sort of vocal about what it means to be an architect, but also what it means to for young people to engage productively with the architecture profession and the built environment at large. And I've worked previously with the RIB on EDI practice clinics and RIBA radio panels, and I contribute to the next generation for the next generation of architects as an ambassador for the Mayor of London Design Challenge. So with all these experiences and experiences and things that I've done in the past, I'm trying to channel all that through to make a positive impact with one of the largest institutions in the architecture industry. That's the RIBA. Thanks to you guys, actually, Architecture Social, and the fans and listeners. So yeah, this is why I'm here, and I'm trying to tell you a little bit about who I am as a person, and I've just highlighted a little bit why I'm running for the RIBA president.
I love it. I love it. We'll give you the virtual round of applause. We'll give you the virtual round of applause. I'm sure one day we'll do these in person, but for now it's a virtual round of applause. Yeah. But this year's really interesting, isn't it? So, I mean, typically, I studied my part 1 and part 2 years ago, and it's what's quite exciting about this year. So you're up against, in terms of running for the RIBA presidency, against two respected and awesome RIBA council members, and I think both are board members, or definitely one is board member. So that's Joe Bacon and Samita Singer, who are awesome. But what's quite interesting is, so you are coming into this with full of passion. You've coming into this. You're a bit like the outsider, which is kind of cool as well.
I like that.
So
I call it wild card. That's what I'm going.
You're the wild card.
Yeah.
I like
I'm the Maverick. I'm the Maverick.
Right.
Top Gun.
Good. No. So you're the Maverick, in terms of the RIBA presidency, running for it. I think it's important that we have different people going for it as well. So what's it been like at the moment then, running in terms of the hustings and putting the way that you campaign together? And I would love to know what the experience was like, and also, in your words, like, what's important to you that's compelled you to run as the outsider.
So I think one of the reasons I'm running is just for a little bit more representation. Um,
Mm.
before I started this campaign process, I didn't know it. We didn't. No one knew who was going to be running, but
Yeah.
the feeling was it's going to be a little bit more orthodox, a little bit more status quo,
More of the same, is it?
more of the same type of candidate, profile of candidate rather.
Right.
But I'll give credit where credit is due. The profile of the candidates has shifted a little bit. So we have Joe Bacon, a stalwart in the architecture industry,
Yeah.
a woman, Sumita Singh, similar. She's done quite a lot of things with architectural change, etc. But also there's
Yeah.
me, the wild card, the maverick candidate, Nigerian Brit, who I studied in the regions in Sheffield. I worked in Birmingham, so I have a sort of plurality of experience in
Yeah.
different regions. And I think it's a testament to where the direction of where the profession is going, but also what the RIBA is going to other underrepresented groups. But I do
Very
think
cool.
more needs to happen, and I think
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
shouldn't just be the one-off. And I think we can do that by engaging a little bit more with the profession, and with more representation, more people feel compelled to do the same as I have done. Because we need to start talking to members who are disenfranchised. We need to also talk to members who have left, and people who are on the sidelines, so to speak, who are on the cusp of leaving, because we need to be as a professional body, as architect, we are stronger together, and we need to encourage more people to participate meaningfully to these type of like progressive governance structures.
Yeah.
And
Well
that's one of
said.
the reasons why I'm doing it.
I'll give you a clap. Hey, you're still in Hastings mode. I love it. You gotta, shout loud and proud about this stuff. And I think it's important because, and I think that we'll reiterate that. So one day maybe you're going to be the director of Mace where you're at now, and I'm sure you'll get there. But right now, you're on your journey, aren't you? There's no big architecture practice from you. So in some senses, you're a mere
Better now.
mortal,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Hmm.
then I think that's important. So let's just hear a little bit. How was it like then at the moment running a campaign as well as working your day job? Is that a little stressful right now?
I wouldn't lie, it's a little bit stressful, but
This
I,
is
I
going to be good training for when you become the RIBA president potentially,
it,
yeah?
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a what's it called? It's a dry run to what the presidency period is
Yeah,
going to look like. So I am not complaining, but I have had fantastic help from quite a lot of people. My partner, she has been like immense with this, and
yeah,
drive. Her understanding and you know sympathy. Sympathy,
yeah.
empathy. I don't know and it's a couple of those. Everything. She has been really instrumental in keeping me a little bit sane and
Of
helping with
course.
all of these issues, and also a soundboard to like because I'm this is what I talk about now. It has
Yeah, it's the
engulfed
theme
my
at
life.
the dinner table.
Yeah.
How's the campaign doing today, honey? Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't, I,
Um,
I don't blame you. Well, that's good.
but I'm
But
trying to
when
balance it. I'm trying to balance it, and yeah, Mace have been super good as well.
cool.
And I have a cracking team behind me as well. We have a wonderful WhatsApp group, very lively. I look over from the my phone for like a minute, and there's like I look back, and it's like 40 messages unread. I'm like, ooh,
This
the
is
things are
it.
lively.
Multitasking, WhatsApp in life, in person, the rail
Yeah.
strikes, it's all kind of kicking off. Well,
Hmm.
while you've got your, we can relax, and we are going to relax. But I've
Yeah, we
actually
can
had a
unwind.
good, yeah, we can unwind. But I've
Yeah,
also had a good question that's come in from Jason, which
yeah,
I think, if you put on your campaign hat or even relaxed hat, you're going to
yeah.
enjoy with. So I'm going to bring it up because it's quite a cool one. So it says, Jason, and so for any of the audio listeners after this as well, Jason says, hi, could you tell me, as all the candidates are London based, again,
Again.
and I sense a little bit of, in that inverted commas, a little bit of a, again, how will you work with the north of the UK and address our issues of low pay? Well, you did study in Sheffield as well, so you might be equipped to answer this, right?
Yeah, so I am a proxy northerner. Okay, I spent
Uh,
I spent 5 years, 5 good years, from my 20s, my late teens to my mid 20s there. So like I'd say that's more of a my formative years
yeah,
at Sheffield. So I would say I'm a northerner, but I think it's I challenge first of all I'll challenge the people from the north to run for the presidency. You know, um, it is open. It's an open call, but it's not unsurprising that most all three of us are London based. But I would like to one of the things that I would like to push. At the RIBA is a decentralized, devolved type of RIBA where each regions which already exist have the power and the clout and the platform to do things their own way that services their own regional concerns. At the moment, it's quite central. Everything comes from London. Everything comes from the HQ. We are refurbishing the HQ in London. So
mm,
it's the messaging in that is a little bit contentious, and
yeah.
I understand why everyone is in
Because it's one house, isn't it?
yeah,
That I think that's where it's one house is in London,
yeah,
and I think a few people up north. And I studied in Manchester as well, so
mhm.
I hopefully am an adopted northerner as well, so I can get away with it. But I can
Yeah,
understand. I can understand that it's catch 22 because on one hand, right, you got to have a house somewhere, but does
yeah,
it have to be one house? Can it
yeah,
be, you know, like
yeah,
can there be
yeah,
a king of the north and a king of the
yeah,
south?
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, why not? Why can't there be a king of the north? And we can. I think this sort of devolved administration type thing is something
Mm,
they've been talking about so much for the past few years within
mm,
like central government or central government in the UK,
yeah,
and talking about leveling up and this and the other. And I think that sort of filters down into um, politics like this in architecture. We need to take some of the learnings from these established institutions and
yeah.
try to implement it even better than what's happening. So I think how that would look in terms of sorting out the low pay is
Mm,
trying to sort of figure out a champion the champion a little bit more collaboration on a local level,
yeah.
so that uh, for example, Manchester Society of Architects are doing RIBA events as well, as
Yeah,
opposed
and
to
great events. All the
yeah,
pictures, so many people turning up to it.
exactly.
Jason's there, Paul. Paul Eden. I mean, they look quite fun, don't they?
hmm 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 But that should also be given on a platform on the RIBA website and
Mm,
RIBA social media. Um, but it's I don't I the way it looks at the moment, maybe it is, but if it is, it needs to be communicated a little bit better. But if it's
mm.
not, we just need to plug into that a little bit more. But also give people tools to do that. More importantly,
I agree, and look, I'm going to give you a clap for talking about low pay because it's a tricky subject. I know we haven't all got the answers, but especially right now, there's a bit of a housing. I say housing crisis, but even like
cost
my
of living.
electricity bill is going up. Right, I'm turning everything off. I'm going around the house to my partner, being like, "Honey, can you please turn the lights off and everything?" And I think that we have to have these conversations as a profession, don't we, about how architecture is going,
Yeah.
how can we look after everyone who works in an architecture practice, and especially as well. And a hot topic that comes to mind for me is we've both been students, right? And we know how hard it is. We know how much debt you can rack up, and let alone it's like £9,000 a year now. So I think it's really important to talk about these subjects. I mean, how do you feel about students, or if anyone's maybe just a recent architect, or because you've done your Part 3 qualified, am I
I'm pretty
right?
qualified. Yeah.
So
Not
you survived
I've
getting
survived.
qualified.
I've survived the journey. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I've been like everyone else. I've been sort of in every time I graduate, I was like, do I want to do this? uh, um, internally you have that sort of moral like quandary. Is thinking, well, I could do something else, and is would it be would I be any worse off for it? And
Mm,
one of the reasons why I did that continue to do architecture because I felt a little bit it was a little more passionate, something that I could do. It felt like that there's a growth opportunity there, but also it was dynamic enough. I felt it was
yeah,
dynamic enough, but if it wasn't, I could make it dynamic enough for me so that I can move across different sectors. And before, when I thought about different sectors, I thought about different types of buildings. But
yeah,
now I am being a little bit more radical in my thinking about what different sectors in architecture is. And in my
yeah.
husband's when just that I just did, I was talking about well the product of architecture, which is the building, designing buildings, and you have different types of buildings, so from hospitals to cultural
Mm-hmm.
venues, etc. That's something. But also there's the process of architecture, um, and I think that's something that is under that is not talked about enough. The
Mm,
way architects get the building done
mm,
through policy making, through digital tools,
mm.
through research. Like, how do you get the body of knowledge to do that product? And I think the RIBA should be a little bit more engaged in all that conversation and
Yeah,
champion that as much as we champion. Well, this star architect did this wonderful building in Doha or something. I'm
yeah.
tired of seeing all of that. I want to see, oh, this architect has done this super cool research and got funding for it, and like, done something like dynamic, different. And that's where I want sort of a rebalance in our focus. Yes, we do
Mm,
cool, fantastic cultural, civic, fantastic buildings, but also how do we get there? um, and
yeah.
that's where we can sort of up the ante to differentiate and diversify what it is to be an architect.
Love
Um,
it. I think you're right. We have so many unsung heroes in architecture as well, as you said, isn't it? It's like, yes, it's cool having, the Starchitects, but I also think like there's a big team of like 150 people normally behind one Starchitect.
mhm.
And as well as that, so I think the people are important. And I love what you said about the important buildings like hospitals and all this stuff. And I think it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. Now I've got to be honest. When earlier I was going to bring up this message because it says congratulations on the RIBA candidacy, and then I noticed there was a
Thank you.
huge question. So if you saw me, that I took it down because I was like, I've got to give you a chance to, we're relaxing here as well.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
there's a question that's popped up, and let me read it out for the audio listeners later because I will probably post this tomorrow, which
Hmm.
says. Congratulations on your RIBA presidency candidacy. My question, or one of my questions, is: do you believe it's the most urgent that you what
Believe,
I'm struggling. My
what do
brain's
you
gone as
believe
well.
is the most urgent issue
What
that
do you
you will
believe?
address if you win, which is
Okay,
based on what AAEC professionals have stated as their biggest grievance?
there you
Best
go.
wishes, Emeka. By the way, great podcast, Stephen Drew and Jason and GAA.
Well, I messed that up, so it's not great. So, look, if you don't get the RABA presidency, there's a job for you on this podcast where you can be the host and read the questions out. But please, I mean, share your thoughts on that, if you'd like, while I get my stuff ready here. Do you have any thoughts on that
What
question?
is the biggest issue? I think there are going to be a few big issues,
Yep,
and I think one of it would be trying to champion architecture through the architect, and
yep,
that's through the grassroots architects or architecture assistants, architectural workers in general, and that provides us solutions, tangible solutions, workable solutions to address some of their pain points.
yeah,
That is overwork, excessive work, and underpay. And
yes,
how the RIBA sort of addresses that with through disciplinary action for um, sort of not disciplinary action, but like expanding and championing and making sure that the chartered practices adhere to the codes of practice and code of conduct
Mm,
and discipline when that people are fall in breach of that. I think that's
mm,
one way to tackle it. So like that's a sort of stick method, and
yes.
then the carrot method would be to champion and highlight people the ways people other practices are paying their staff well.
Yes. I agree. You've got to celebrate people who are doing it right, give them
Yeah,
exposure, shine
yeah,
the light on people who are doing it right, and
yeah,
of course, we can talk about unpaid overtime, and it's because it is important to talk
yeah,
about that, and
yeah,
salary, and then jobs that are advertised at a lower rate. It's
yeah,
awful, especially if
yeah,
someone studied for 5 years and he goes, "Here's a job at 16 grand." You're like,
yeah,
what? You can't live off that.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I'm glad you're thinking along that line.
Yeah, they doing that, but also um, bringing using the platform of the RIA to bring um, uh, the knowledge from emerging markets into the conversation of what an architect does. So I know I don't want to name. I don't know if I can name drop. I know few people who worked with me, or I worked in close contact with at different practices, have set up their
Yep.
own practices, or not architectural specific practices, but
Mm-hmm.
practices in the region of the AEC industry. They're very future focused. They are doing sort of BIM. Operability tools for large modular contractors, um,
Mm,
and it's kind of taking some of the roles, the skills of what an architect does, where sort of you're planning, you're designing a plan for a building, but they've done
mm,
it on a computer or something, and they're selling those tools and systems to modular contractors who are building houses in factories. So this sort of
mm.
poses the question of like if this is the future, modern means of construction designed for manufacturing and assembly is the future of construction. Where, as an architect, do you sit in that? Do you
Mm.
sit in your sort of traditional sphere and you draw stuff by hand, or are you like I'm going to name drop now, MATLAB, who do quite funky
Oh,
stuff?
I know David Flynn and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So what is where I think it's there's a room for both things, because you can't do it for large, like super large spaces, but well, you can, but there's a conversation to be had. There's a conversation to be had where you are a smaller outfit. What do you do when there's a practice here who can do your job 5 times, 10 times better than you, quicker than you,
Mm.
and do it without lifting or clicking a button on a mouse, you know? And it's that sort of conversations that the RIBA needs to have and bring those people in so that everyone can learn, and all boats rise with the high tide.
Yeah,
At the
yeah.
moment, we're retreating grounds, and we're saying the architect only does details and draws drawings, but that's not the case right now.
No.
Yeah,
Very interesting. I've definitely seen a few of those MATLAB scripts of all
yeah,
all this stuff, but it's very interesting. I think people worried about technology kind of taking over our jobs. Well,
yeah,
I've seen that in recruitment for years. Oh my god, the algorithms are going to come, and the reality is you still need a recruiter and all this stuff.
yeah. You still do.
So
Yeah,
yeah, well, I mean, more important stuff than recruitment, but that's like we don't want to talk about that tonight. What am
yeah,
I
yeah.
doing?
No, I mean,
What am I
I'm
doing?
not saying that the computer is going to take over the architect role, but the architect role is being redefined without
Mm,
the the
nice.
outside the confines of the RIBA.
Mm.
And if we don't engage with them, it's going to take off, and we're going to be left behind. And I don't want us to be
Got
left behind.
got to embrace the new cool stuff going out. I agree.
Yeah,
Well, I've got to concentrate now because I've got to read this question out properly. I can't fail again. I don't want the computer crashing. It's just been a long day, guys. You got to You got to let me off the hook a bit. So we've had a few comments coming in. Kay Robertson says, much better than the debate, than the official RIBA hustings I have just attended. Okay, you're going to get me in trouble saying this stuff. It's a quote that's come through. And Jason says, you need to come on Clubhouse. The GAA podcast is the best place for discussion. Hey, what about the Architecture Social, Jason? That's not fair. But I'm sure there's an open invitation there for you, Muyiwa, if you want to go there, you know?
Jason, hit me up on LinkedIn, on Instagram.
Well, we need to be talking about this stuff, isn't it? And extending and opening up the conversation. And maybe that's a good one to talk about as well. Because I think especially we seeing stuff online, we can have these conversations. And I think it'd be fair that, and I'm going to say this, that some of the critiques I've seen, perhaps of the RIBA, might have been about open transparency. And there's been ways of going forward on that, but there's a lot of work to be had as well. So, I mean, what would you like to see in, should you be the RIBA president in terms of communications, open transparency? What would you like to kind of, in your opinion, take it a bit step forward in terms of being more open and transparent?
Like I said earlier, it's about like a sort of devolved, decentralized system of governance where the regions are the stars. And at the moment, there are regions, and the regions they are at the bottom of the page. So the House of Architecture right now, architecture.com, is at the bottom. Like the regions don't really matter. It feels like,
Right.
and it also is like that. So that's one thing. Make the regions the stars. But also, what that I think does is 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 kind of remove all the sort of the amount of steps to get things done. So the
Yeah.
gatekeeping, and I think the whole bureaucracy of like you guys to sign this off by this person and like all of that stuff kind of withers away because if you
Yeah.
have a region that is a star, its own thing, kind of its own entity, it does what they need to do when they need to do it, and the headquarters champions it. But also, what I would like to see again, but is transparency, not just like in that organizational structure, but transparency in like the sort of little things that make the organization work. So transparency in like the staff, like how the staff work, because I think the RIBA needs to be the standard bearer. We talk about like overwork, underpay, XYZ, but do the RIBA, do we actually know exactly what how the inner workings of the RIBA is? And do people? I've heard that there's quite a lot of like overwork and things like that, all salacious gossip. But we need to like be communicating. Look, this is what our staff are doing. XYZ. Transparency in like the complaints procedure or disciplinary procedure. Um, at the moment, it's just a simple email to if you have any grievance with the charter practices, you send an email. But there's no like there is no there's no clear mechanism. No one knows exactly who that message is going to through to. It's like just I think sparse is the word that I'd like to say. And if this type of things are well documented, they have been done for ages. Universities have this processes in place. So I mean, it's just learning a little bit from all the good places, all the good examples that we can find. Transparency in our council meetings, for example, wherever it's needed, if it's not sensitive or confidential data, let that be out in the open in to let the press in. So like there are lots of sort of organizational things that you can do. Where I know that it's not just in the remit of the presidency, but it's that sort of setting the gold standard, setting this precedent that this is what the RIVA can be, and this is what the president needs to do, and say, well, we need to be transparent. And this is how we need to be doing it. Board, executive, executors.
Yeah, fair play. It's a good point because if we're talking about looking after people, we're talking about respecting mental well-being and so forth. It kind of has to happen inwards to happen outwards, right? And that involves the staff of the RIBA as well as the members. It's a very good point, and I've seen it in other organizations as well, where I think long hours in particular, which is a big theme in architecture, it's not productive. People go sick. They're not disengaged. We're actually getting those things under control, even in my experience. People are more engaged with the profession. And I think it's really hard to kind of, have you ever had the moment when you go to a dinner party, and I remember this, and I'd say, look, I've done architecture. People look at you like you're a rock star. Like, wow, you are fashion, you are Vogue, you are designing stuff. And you can't really feel glamorous when you've done these massive all-nighters and you're not paid for it, and it's it doesn't line up with that perception. And I remember when I would burst people's bubbles saying, well, actually, I'm on this kind of salary before, people would be like, oh, that's strange. And I think, well, how has it got so far? I know there's a few factors. I know the developers have squashed on architects' fees, and also architects have not been good to themselves by undercutting each other and stuff like this. But surely we all have to start talking about these conversations, tricky conversations like unpaid overtime. We have to talk about architects' fees, and we have to start like trying to pull ourselves up, right? Because otherwise, I don't feel like this situation's sustainable. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, or that sentiment, because there is a public perception. Maybe it's rose tinted, maybe it's archaic. What an architect is and they do.
It's a rock
Um,
star, isn't it, in the
yeah,
public?
yeah, it's a public perception. Like, oh wow, you're like, maybe it's because of like shows like How I Met Your Mother. How I Met Your Mother. No,
Yeah, Ted's
yeah, yeah,
he's an
Ted,
architect, isn't he, with his
yeah,
models and the
yeah,
papers. And then that's the old-fashioned thing, isn't it? You're
yeah,
doing that and the model and
yeah.
the drawings.
But I think, yeah, I think part of what the remit of the RIBA should be is to communicate better with
Mm.
the wider public, and it's eh, one when you were talking about this, one thing I that came to mind was, well, okay, we have all these groups, events, and things like that.
Yeah.
Another reason why the RIBA, in a self-interested way, needs to solve that issue, to be able to engage with its members, solve the issue of
Mhm.
overwork, is, well, if like 90% of your membership is working overtime, they're not gonna have time to like engage with you. So in a
Yeah.
sort of selfish self-interest kind of way, you'd be like, well, if we solve this issue, one of this issue that's quite prevalent in our industry, well, it means people are, like, their mental health and their well-being is taken care of, but also, in selfishly, we can, when we do stuff, people can actually attend it, you know,
Yeah.
and
I
actually
yeah.
take part in it, you know.
Yeah, and look, I have a lot of respect for a lot of architectural practices. I know sometimes overtime does happen. However, I want to just get rid of this idea of overtime paid is impossible, because I worked in Accra Lowry and they do it. So let's just put it out there that some companies do, and you don't have to just do that. That's just one way of doing it. But I think it's about respect of your employees, right? Time in lieu. There's lots of different ways that you can cut holidays, looking after people. There's lots of ways you can do it. And I think one of the other words that I feel, it's like respect, isn't it? It's just like knowing that, sometimes you got an awful deadline. It's just that like hug,
Yeah,
like, okay, you don't have to do this, but if you want to, it really helps. But, that's a different environment than feeling pressured to do it, that you should be. I remember that feeling of like, you should be grateful for this job, and you should be grateful to do the overtime, and how dare you bring it up. I just before I move on to one or two questions, you can add your thought on that.
yeah,
Do you know what it comes to mind? Like, sometimes in architecture, it reminds me of Gordon Ramsay, and it's like,
yeah,
to be the best chef, you need to learn and suffer. And the way he's in his show and he's just kicking off, and it's always You idiot sandwich, what are you doing? And I think that there's like a bit of that in architecture where it's like you must suffer to get to the top. These sleepless nights and all this stuff. And kind of when you burst that bubble, it's like, well, I mean, it's funny watching Gordon Ramsay on Kitchen Nightmares scream at someone for entertainment. But when you realize it's a real person, and being in that situation or being frightened for your job, it's kind of not cool, is
No, it's
it?
not cool. It's not cool.
It's
It's
not.
definitely, and I have gotten, I sympathize and empathize a little because in my earlier years there was a
Yeah.
bit of that happening, and
Mm,
I think the FAF open letter to the RIBA sort of reignited some of that feeling that I had, and I sort of squashed it down deep down inside my psyche. But I think again, some of that really was a sort of motivation for me to, stand up,
yeah.
put my voice forward for this presidency candidate, and say the things that I'm passionate about, and try to push the needle however best I can, really. But
Yeah.
it's something that needs to be sorted out, definitely. This is the culture.
Yeah.
The thing is that culture is not like top down. It's things that people do and not celebrate, but just the way of life. People make the culture, and people can make it, and then they can change it. So we just need to change it.
Well said. Well said. I think I've got another question that's popped up, and I'm going to start off it, and I'm going to give you a break because you've had a long day, and I'll kind of give my thoughts summary of it, but we'll listen to you as well because there's an anonymous user that said, "What are your thoughts on ARB's proposals, which are quite radical actually for changing architectural education, and how would you support this as president?" I mean, there's been a lot of talk actually last week or two with the Bartlett, hasn't there? There's been a lot of
Yeah.
talk about. And as well, architecture, it takes 5 years to do, part one, part two, part three. I kind of checked out at like halfway through my part two. Well, I did my part two and I was in industry and I was like, right, I'm not going to do this. But
Yeah.
tell me what your thoughts are about ARB's proposals. And I'll bring that up in the background while you're
Mhm.
talking as well
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
listeners.
That's a very good question. Yeah, I support it definitely because this part one, part two, part three system has been around for like the past 50 years and
Mm-hmm.
hasn't changed. It's
Right.
changed a little bit, just a bit of history here, but it's changed a little bit with some sort of what's it called? What's the word? Uh, uh,
It's
it escapes
late.
me.
Your brain's gone. You've been husting for a while. Don't
I've
worry.
been hustling.
I
No,
relax a little bit.
the the work while you work and study at the same time. What is that word?
Work-life balance.
No, the
Damn.
apprenticeship scheme. So like,
Apprenticeships. We
yeah,
did
that,
it.
yeah.
Victory.
So
Long day, isn't it?
yeah, so the apprenticeship scheme is something that's recent and has changed. Well,
Yes.
in its format, it's something that's changed the part one to three monopoly for the past 50 years. And I'm very
Mm,
much my vision is to focus on the future architect and what that is and how
yeah.
that person develops or gets trained as an architect. And I would want to work with the ARB to define what this flexible and innovative mode of training an architect is, because I would like to sit at a table and define the outcomes, because that's what we're talking about is an outcomes based solution. And I think
Mm,
that has a cascading effect across the industry because it's going to be more uh, inclusive because people from all works of life can tap into it.
yeah.
They can do it at different parts of their
Mm.
timeline, because at the moment, if you're not 18 years old, you're doing your GCSEs or A levels, and you have that idea that a brainwave that, oh, maybe I want to be an architect and do
You might
it.
not be able to afford it anymore.
You
Yeah.
might not be able to afford it, but also you if you don't do that, if you don't do it at part one at your 20 years old, because it's a 7-year course, you I it's highly like highly doubtful that you're going to do it at 25. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
I agree. It's especially the current economic state
Mm,
at the moment. It's super hard for people to
mhm,
go in architecture. I mean, talk about barriers to architecture. It's the money and the availability. I mean, thank goodness for the apprenticeship scheme. I
mhm,
mean, I think it's amazing that at least if the university costs are high, at least if you can work and
mhm,
the work informs what you're learning, I think
mhm,
it's awesome. I was just bringing up while we were chatting here, and if you can see in the ARB's response to rejigging education, most
mhm,
people were very supportive of their vision.
mhm.
Part one, part two, part three, 65% of respondents agree that the structure to change needs to change from the current approach.
Mhm.
It's like most people agree that part one, part two, part three isn't the maybe there is a better another way to explore it. So
Mhm.
it would be interesting to see what happens there as well.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean the ARB the RIBA has a vested interest in this, and
mhm.
it needs to be there making this change so that they can uphold the standards, and the ARB can do the job of regulating what the architect does.
I agree. So we've got a few more things popped in. So Jason says some would say that the Gordon Ramsay style of architects are in power. And it needs to change. And the ARB reforms are great. I've had Kara suggested as well. Man, maybe this is a good point as well because we've established that Joe and Samita they're respected. I respect them as well. They're awesome. But it'd be quite interesting to know a little bit about how your campaign is slightly different than those two. So you've been in the hustings now, and I'd love to know where you see what's different from what's being talked about from the other two candidates and compared to what you're passionate about. Maybe your priorities, which are different, and things you like to focus on. I mean,
Y- Yeah,
go for
yeah.
it.
Well, I think this contest is about leadership. And leadership, a type of leadership that can communicate better, can
Mm-hmm.
speak out loudly, can speak out effectively for architecture through architects. I am speaking from lived experience, so I
Right.
know what is happening right now. My friend Ben Derbyshire said this: it's nothing more compelling than someone speaking from lived experience who can actually make the industry sit up. Um, my key position is to be an accessible leader, not trying to like service existing council or board relationships because
Yep.
this, that, and the other, but it's because I am bringing a fresh perspective. I don't have any sort of agenda that I need to like
Yeah, add this to your LinkedIn like
yeah,
resume so
yeah.
that
No, it's
yeah,
it's about trying to push the needle to make sure that we are doing something different,
yeah,
but doing something different in service of our members. Um, and I think with that, you need some energy, you need some drive to get the job done. I think my sort of maverick wildcard stance is free from this sort of institutionalized bias of like outdated best practice ideas,
yeah,
and it's basically I'm not an insider, and that should be nice. That should be good because it's fresh thinking, is different ways of operating, is something that the institutions like this that have been doing the churn for quite a long number of years need. And there's
yeah,
also precedent for it with the RIAS, with Christina, with AIA recently, with Kimberly, and like in sort of new emerging membership organizations like UKPA, which is the UK Property Association. So like young, driven individuals are sitting at the helm trying to sort out a strategic focus to make sure that their membership bodies have the seat at the table at all these important junctions. And I think
yeah.
that's what I do. That's what I will do, as opposed to my two candidates, competitors.
I love it. I'll give you a clap. That was brilliant. Our Love Island relaxing session after sun's gone out the window because I think everyone's so keen to ask these questions. I'm so glad that we're talking about these, and there's no script here. We're really rock and rolling it at 8 o'clock as it should be. Speaking from the heart. There was a comment that's come in, and I agree with this comment from Hassan, which has said he would like to see an easier process of gaining certification for international architects. And maybe that is something to think about because there's such a skill shortage of architects right now, especially in London. And we have all these awesome people, especially overseas architects with the qualifications in different countries. And sometimes that's not recognized by the RIBA or the ARB. But I know you're tackling the RIBA beast, but that could be a conversation down the line with the ARB, I think, isn't it? Because we got all this talent, and the UK's a cool place, whether it's London or Manchester. Jason, there you go, Manchester in particular. I was gonna ask you a few other questions, if that's all right, because I want to know a bit more about you outside of this. So, you're fully in campaign mode right now, and you mentioned that your awesome partner is, obviously cares a lot about you and is entertaining those conversations, like at the dining table. But before the campaign, what did you used to get? What did you used to get up to outside of core hours and architecture? So when you weren't working at Mace, tell us a bit about what you were up to, what you're interested in.
What was I interested in?
You can't remember there anymore now, can't you?
That was a long time ago. What was I interested in? So I was interested in art and cycling and cooking.
You were frantically cycling on the way here, weren't you, after your stints, right?
Yeah, I was. So I was at the office and then I had to cycle all the way back home to do this because I thought I was going to be at home all day. So it was just going to be Hustings and then move on to.
You work for an awesome company and the cogs turn, right? So.
So I had to so cycling was a big passion of mine. Cooking was a big passion of mine, and I still get the chance to do that. Traveling and just hanging out with people. I used to like to go to all these do all these cultural trips to the Tate. I used to have I used to have or still have a Tate membership, so I went across all the Tate's galleries. I think that was predominantly it, but also watching Netflix shows was one of my favorite parts.
You won't have any time for that when you're president. Well, it's a few cool architecture ones as well. You gotta have a bit of downtime though. We're all human, aren't we? We're all human. I do like the Tate. It's cool. Tate Britain or Tate Modern. Tate Britain is actually
is a good one.
We're on about the big one. Tate Britain's actually opposite EPR's office, which is a cool architecture practice as well.
Yeah.
So if you become RIBA president, you can make an excuse to go see EPR when really you're going to go to the Tate,
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
What I was going to say now, last thing before we wind down, because you need to go. I don't want you and your partner to break up and have something awful in the campaign when you're doing so well. But is there, while I'm here, I mean, the focus really is on you, but is there anything you'd like to ask me at all before we go, or thoughts or questions? Could be about architecture employment at the moment, could be about me. I'm probably not that interesting, but is there anything you'd like to pick my brains on before we go?
So how do you you have this sort of massive following with Architecture Social? How do you manage all that? You're a stalwart right now because you're one of the popular platforms for information. Where did you get the idea from, and how do you manage all of this?
Well, it kind of came up in the pandemic when I was on furlough. And I was watching a lot of Netflix, and I was enjoying myself far too much. And I was like, I'm going to kill all my brain cells drinking beer and watching Netflix. I need to do something constructive. And that's where it came from. The truth is, that's one of the reasons this was scheduled at 4:00. It's because it's just me right now, and I'm struggling as well. But I guess I try to follow things I'm passionate about. I don't have a big script. I actually, Mariam, we did a live stream talking about the stuff at Bartlett. I was really keen for us to kind of let our hair down and have a chat and be a little bit more informal. And so I just follow my gut of what's important. Or as well, I guess one thing from my role, especially when I work more on recruitment, is one of the weird things about recruitment, and everyone feels awkward talking about recruitment. But I speak to people in different points in their careers, and what's kind of cool is that I speak to probably between 10 to 100 people a day, and I just hear all these little bits of conversations, what they're talking about, what their frustrations are. So, and like what's happening, what's winding them up, what do they love, what are they excited about. So I get to talk to a lot of people, and when I start hearing something happen a lot, like I want to talk about it. So, for example, a great episode I did, which is something that you can, unpack in the future should you be an RIBA president, for example, is how it's a massive uphill battle for an overseas architect who doesn't have UK experience to get a job in the UK. It's torture, right? They go through hell and back, and it's like baptism by fire. And I've never seen anyone talk about it. And so themes like that, hopefully you can discuss, because actually, like you said, the RIBA needs to constantly make efforts to be inclusive with all architects, because I know it's the Royal Institute of British Architects, but it's kind of, we're all human beings, and I think that would be really cool to do. So bit of a long-winded answer, but I just follow my gut and my heart, and we just see where it goes. But occasionally I drop a clanger because I don't know, it's unscripted. Yeah.
No,
Cool.
but like you seem to have your finger on the pulse. Like you're like the zeitgeist. So I'm not following you on LinkedIn, and I'm following all the things that you're doing. So it is like when I want to get a little bit more background, it's
Right.
more of a architecture social.
It's
Yeah.
because I speak to people every day, and so the bits and bobs that I pick up is from the people, your members, your fellow members, and maybe it could be, the people you represent. If everyone vote,
Yeah.
maybe
If
that would
everyone
be
vote.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to end on that note, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe. Yeah.
because this is important, and it's a nice summary, right? Now, I've got a confession, because I before used to be that person that was like, there's no point in voting. I was that person, and I should have got involved, but I didn't. I was a bit naive and a little bit, I don't know what the word is for it, so it's late, pig-headed. I was a little bit, like, I can't be bothered. And that was an excuse. It was an excuse as I was misinformed, but I think at the time, I just didn't feel that maybe someone was speaking my language. And so, whatever person that you vote for in the campaign, I think now more than ever this year, you should just have a look and vote. Vote for who you want. It could be this gentleman over here. It could be the awesome Joe Bacon. It could be the awesome Samita Singh. You got to really think about who is passionate for you, whose values are closer to you, and who you can relate to. But if nothing else, let's vote, because I would be very proud of everyone. And remember, you don't have to be just a chartered architect. I think if you're a student before a certain date, you can vote as well. So if you're a part one or a part two, like me, because that's technically what I am, or a part three, you can vote. You just have to do it, and your voice will be heard. Last year, it was 13% of all the 50,000 members who voted. So why not? We can make a big difference by just voting, and everyone will recognize the importance of it. So that's my ending note on it. I would like you to end your note on it as well, and share what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and I just want to end on the fact that this is an opportunity to campaign on the priorities that I've already mentioned earlier. It's about transparency and inclusion. It's about focusing on what the future architect is and campaigning for that for the next 2 years. I'd like to start that conversation, push that the envelope so that it's continued by my predecessors, whoever they may be, but also building the skills for the digital type of architect, because it is happening, and we don't want as a profession, as an industry, to retreat from that. We need to embrace that properly, and that's what I'm campaigning for. That's what I feel passionate about, and that's why I believe that you should vote for me to be that
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah. Definitely vote, and
Hmm.
also check out what this gentleman's thing is.
Yeah,
All his campaign. You've seen the Love Island After Sun. You can
yeah,
watch the polished hustings, right?
yeah.
Make up your own mind. But I really appreciate the time that you've made here this evening.
Mhm.
I respect the values that you have. I respect the background you come from, and I think I applaud you for doing this. So, on that note, I will end the live stream here. But more importantly, if anyone wants to reach out to you to talk in
Yeah,
detail about what they're passionate about, what you're
yeah,
passionate about, where
yeah.
can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn at Muyiwa Oki. You can find me on Instagram at Muyiwa.Oki. And you can
Okay.
find me on Twitter at Muyiwa_Oki. So,
Hey, fabulous. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to end the broadcast right now. Thank you for all
all right.
tuning in. You're
Thank you so much, guys.
legends. I will end the broadcast in 1 second. Stay on the stage with me, and everyone follow the campaign and vote. Take
All
care,
right.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.